Hello, beautiful artists. Today, as you know, if you've been watching me, I've been going out in my garden and finding all kinds of fun and interesting things growing. Everything's really different this year because of all the rain we had. So yesterday I found these beautiful roses and I did a tutorial on those. I know you all love the roses. And today I walked out and our kumquat tree is getting all kinds of fruit, which is really late in the season. But so I picked some of those branches and thought I'd maybe paint some of those. They're really pretty. And if you haven't had a kumquat, you guys, they're pretty tasty. They're very tart. The inside is really sweet. They're like a little mini orange, I guess, but you can eat the peel. So kind of tasty there. The other thing I'm using is my Paul Rubens MeiLang palette. This is the smaller palette, so it doesn't have the metallics, but I love these because I can paint with these daily when I'm painting an awful lot and I don't want to paint with Winsor Newton all the time. Has a lot of really beautiful mixed colors, so you don't have to worry about mixing, which is great. That can be overwhelming for the beginner. And they're just really creamy and vibrant and as well very transparent, which I love. So Paul Rubens, that's the small palette. I recommend if you don't want to, as a beginner, invest in those Winsor Newtons right away. I'm also using today my favorite brush, my 8 Velvetouch Princeton round. Love it because it's short. It's got a really great feel for the handle. And I can get both thin and thick brush strokes with it, so I love that. And then as far as my paper today, I love my Meeden paper. It's 100% cotton, and it's kind of, I see it as a in-between from the Artisto pads and the arches. I do love it, but today I'm going to be painting on this wonderful these Artisto pads. I recommend to you all the time for several reasons. Number one, for the beginner, again, they're a great price point, and I've tried a lot of student grade papers. This one by far, I couldn't recommend it enough. Also kind of cool because it's in a ring binder, so I label these by the month, or maybe I make one whole pad just all color swatches or Christmas. And if you do want to give one as a gift, they are perforated, so you can tear them out and do that. And they've got some great texture. All right, so let's get started. The brush strokes I'll be using will be like a compound stroke. So let me just show you that. These leaves on this kumquat are quite long and narrow. So I'm going to use point, press, point. Point, press, point. Like that. So that's point, press. You could even just do one side like that, would be just fine. And then I'll be using this wet and wet, which I love the wet and wet, you guys, because it really shows off what watercolors can do and is very spontaneous. Your colors just mix on their own. So I just love this wet and wet. Just like that. So that's basically the techniques we'll be using today. And I'm going to start with my lightest values. So let's go ahead and do that. And, you know, I think what I'll do is use my tree green, which is the very light green here in the MeiLang palette. It's a really pretty hue. And let's just go in and create a few branches here. So very thin line using the point of my brush. Going to add in a little bit of brown. Let that kind of mix. So beautiful. I just love this brown and green together. I think it's so earthy and beautiful. So I've got a few here. And I'm going to go in with a very light value paint. So probably 80 water, 20% pigment. And lay in some of my lightest value leaves. Now, if you need to, you can always practice and see how light your value is before you go onto your paper. And then tapping off my brush just to get rid of any excess water, because especially for beginners, when you're learning to control your water and your paint, make sure when you're laying down your brush strokes, you're not creating a puddle. That's really hard to control for new beginners. So just that little tip for you, because you'll end up getting frustrated if you can't control that paint. So going in again, adding some water if you need to. Just take your little pad and kind of check how dark or light. We're starting with our light values. So just going in, laying that down. There we go. And these light values are what's going to be in the background, and then we'll build up. There you go. Just keep going. And try to also vary your sizes of leaves so they all don't look like the exact same size. Because I don't think in nature they're all the same size. These are actually pretty much the same size, but I think it's much more interesting to vary the sizes, vary the values. And then while this is kind of wet, wash and rinse your brush. Go in and pick up some of that yellow. Water it down a little bit, because again, we're starting with the light values, and anything with the word cat in front of it is going to be really intense, you guys. And then I'm just going to go in and lay down some of those, these little yellow orange kumquats in here. Point. And as you can see, they're really blending with the leaves. Point. And that's okay. I like that. Tuck in a few. There we go. I'm varying the hues, so some have a little bit more water consistency, others a little bit more paint. Like that. And then you can even touch in. Maybe to some of them, add some of that orange. I'm going to go in with just the tip of my brush and pick up some of that green and create a little stem. Some of mine actually do have some green at the tip. So you can always dot in a little bit of green just for some interest. There we go. Okay, so we've got that fruit. And now I will continue to add more leaves, but I'm going to start darkening the value. Another really great exercise is to always include in your paintings those different values. So maybe a darkest to light to mid value to your lightest. And just practice that on your paper here. So here's a light value. Let's do that. So there's a light value. Now add a little bit more paint and play with that mid value. So light and mid, and then go in and do a dark value. So if you include all of those in this painting, you're going to create a lot more interest. Point, press. Like that. The darker they are, the more they're going to pop out in front. So you always want to play with your values. It's one way I noticed even when I started that I really leveled up my paintings is by playing with those values. When everything's the same value, it looks very flat. So let's just keep adding in here. Point, press, and start darkening the value. So I might even add some of that sap green. I think actually in the MeiLang palette, it's Hooker's green. Point, press, and I'm just going to start darkening those values. Point, press. There we go. Point, press. And while that's wet, wash and rinse my brush. Pick up some of that Van Dyke brown and go in and blend some of these. Look how beautiful that is. I just love how that brown blends in with the green. I think it's so beautiful. Okay. And now I'm going to go in and just darken, use a darker value and just keep building. Point, press. Let's see. We want to twist our leaves a little bit. Point, press, pushing into the belly of your brush. So you get that wide brush stroke, and just I tap off on the side of my well. You can also tap onto a paper towel if you think you have a little bit too much water. Let's go right here. Point, press. So as I add in these darker values, I'm pulling the leaves up in front. Point, press. They're popping out, and the lighter leaves look like they're in the background. Point, press, just like that. Point, press. You can also add in maybe some yellow to those. I notice these have some light spots. So while those are wet, you can go in and add some of that yellow. Maybe some more of that brown. Let that bleed in. And we'll just keep kind of adding here because this has got quite a bit of leaves. So a little stem and then press. Now I want to make that darker because it's in front. So point and then press like that. Point, press. There we go. And I think I'm really about done. I think this turned out really pretty. Got lots of fun colors here. Just darkening up a few of those, so those also have some different values. Again, you can use this value sheet for the orange and go in with your dark value. Practice. Your lightest value. And then an in-between value. And making sure you've got all three of those values in here. So I've got some dark ones here. I've got a dark one up here so your eye doesn't get stuck down here. It goes into those dark ones. It's being led around by the dark and light leaves. It's got another dark one up here. So it ends up being very interesting as far as composition. You've got your leaves that are going in and out, guiding the eye around, pulling it back in, and then again, working with the dark and light values. So dark value, then your eyes pulled up here. All right, so I hope that was fun for you to give that a try. I think this is such a valuable tip for beginners, because if you can just include all three of those values, it's going to take your painting from being really flat and maybe kind of dull or boring to popping it out and really creating a lot of interest for the viewer's eye to follow around. And then making sure that you place dark values throughout. You don't want to just have dark values down here. That's why I added one up here, so your eye follows it around and is pulled up here. All right, I hope you guys give that a try. These were really fun, and now I think I will go eat these. Thank you everybody so much for being here with me in our little community. So much fun. Can't wait for 2024, and I hope to be sharing lots more fun things with you this year. All right, thanks everyone.